This program is intended for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised.
All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this very special episode of the Top Focus Podcast. This is the Q&A for Cactus Jack, the thrilling new film that we just screened over the past 2 days. And I see Sydney Sherman has joined us. Hi, Sydney.
Hey, how are you?
So joining me are the filmmakers and the cast themselves, Mr. Sam Cozy? I'm sorry, Sam Cozy and Michael Gull. Welcome, guys. Congratulations on such an amazing film. And it's getting some pretty good reviews. But first thing I got to ask is, did you guys think about this before all of the political turmoil that's been going on? How long has this been ruminating in you?
I think you're asking me and Chris. I'm Jay, by the way.
Chris.
Jay and Chris at the Thornton Brothers. We started this in like 2015. Before he announced his candidacy, so it's been long.
Jay, you gotta start all over again, bro. It was breaking up.
Really?
Big time.
No,
your audio is a little crunchy.
All right.
There you go.
I did nothing different. All right. I was saying we started this in 2015, back before Trump even announced his candidacy or anything. So we've been working on this for forever. Chris and I were always infatuated with these stories. We grew up in DC, kind of the only white kids in this project neighborhood, and race issues always fascinated us. We never understood racism because we're just like, these guys, we would get a little bit of it ourselves because we were the icons of whiteness, I guess, in that neighborhood. So when people would lash back at the systemic whiteness, we would maybe be a target of that. But we understood that because we saw movies like Mississippi Burning and American History X, stuff like that growing up that illustrated obviously to us what the world outside of our neighborhood was like. So we understood that, but we've always just been fascinated with issues of race and identity and everything. And it was all coming to a head post Obama, the Tea Party. And we kind of saw the writing on the wall with this white supremacist movement bubbling back up. And we feel now that we've been saying we diagnosed kind of a national heart murmur that has since revealed itself to be heart disease, and now we're probably in like full cardiac arrest, you could say, or we're close to it. I don't know. The vitals are looking bad, but
we just got a transplant though, so
well, we'll see.
Maybe.
I don't know if the systemic issues have been addressed really, but so yeah, I guess that would explain how long we've been working on it. So kind of our whole lives, but the movie itself 5 years, and we took breaks because we got a couple gigs. Just screenwriting gigs, some TV shows that we'd pitched and had some success with. So we kind of got in a development circle with those. So we'd take breaks and we'd step away from this for kind of like a year. I think there was at least a year lapse at some point, right, Gaul? Where you were like, what the hell are we doing? Are we making this movie or not?
Yeah, it took a minute.
Yeah, so I'm sure there was a lot of doubt along the way if we were even going to complete it, but we finally saw it through and it's out there now to be interpreted, misinterpreted, whatever.
Looks like Sam is gone. He's had enough of your monkey shine.
That makes sense.
So, I know that you've got. I know you guys have made.
You got your liquid wrench in the mail.
I know you guys have made short films before. This is your first feature film, right?
Yeah.
What made you make Cactus Jack when you could have made something much safer? Why did you take such a huge risk with Cactus Jack? It could either make your career or break your career.
Well, at the time, it wasn't as risky as, Jay said. It was before the 2016 election. So some people have called it kind of zeitgeisty, the timing of it coming out now, which was, just a result of how long it took. And we had the date set before what happened at the Capitol and everything. But in a way, it may have hurt us too, because even though the feedback we've gotten is generally overwhelmingly positive, some of what we've been hearing is that people are like, we've been listening to this for the last 4 or 5 years, you know, this kind of the stuff that the character, for those who don't know, this neo-Nazi who lives in his parents' basement, just constantly spewing vile, hateful speech. You know, people say that they've been hearing this for years now, and it's more of, you know, the same. But at the time when we were first working on it, it wasn't as much in the public sphere. So it's been kind of surreal to watch the social political landscape shift as we worked on it.
Yeah, I bet.
Kind of see it come to life, you know, in reality.
Yeah, this one's for Gull. Why did you decide to do Cactus Jack, this really polarizing character?
They asked, basically. I mean, doing like indie films in the Milwaukee market, there isn't sometimes a whole lot, and so I've always done everything that I'm asked to do. I'll give everything a chance, give everything a read, and the story and when they came to me, all I knew was that was what the character was, and he just sounded really fun, I guess, to play. Like, good guys are kind of to play for me. Bad guys are fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've only seen you as bad guys, you know.
Yeah,
henchman number 2 or serious man number 1 and 2, whatever the Blood of Bad Men is. But it was really nice to see you actually like get a chance to act, you know, be a real in-depth character, not just some.
I don't think he knew exactly how bad this character was going to turn out to be.
No.
Yeah, I don't think he knew what you were getting into exactly.
The way they described it, the way you described it to me was, it was a combination of talk radio. The character, he was going to be like the guy in talk radio, and taxi driver.
Meets American History X. So that was a component.
Meets, and then it's meets
the stuff we'll be saying on the radio.
All these other fucked up people.
Well, this gets back to the question you asked about why did we make this film instead of any other film, and part of it is because we've been in the Hollywood development system for years, and we've been noted to death and had all these instances where we would write provocative stuff that would be made safer throughout the development process. And we get it. There's millions of dollars at stake when you make a major motion picture or whatever. But when we were like, let's just make some shit in our basement, do it yourself on a shoestring budget, all the risk aversion goes away. And you're like, we could really push the envelope now. And for once, show hate for what it really is. I mean, there's movies that have dealt with hate and done it well. But I don't know if there's movies that ever made you really feel hate. And that's what we were out for, is this experiential film, which in that sense, I guess it's kind of an art film, even though it's also a horror film, a genre film, where we were less concerned with plot and set pieces and hitting certain prescriptive beats as we were with making you feel something. And what that is can we make a movie that feels like racism feels, that it feels oppressive and you feel constricted by it, and you can't escape, and there's no mobility, and it's ever present. And that's what systemic racism is. I think what we did is made a movie that feels the way a lot of people experience the world on a daily basis. It's interesting. I mean, you could talk about intersectionality and identity and everything, but it's almost like this is a movie for white people to feel oppressed. You know what I mean? Like, we've had black folks, Latinx folks, Latinx folks, whatever, gay dudes messaging us, and they seem to be less offended by it than some of just the run-of-the-mill white folks or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's that soft bigotry of the left, and I don't know what that background noise is.
Yeah, someone can mute themselves.
Yeah, somebody's going off.
If you're not talking, mute yourself.
Yeah, I don't know who needs to mute their mic, but I felt like the characters that Michael Gall played and Sam played were kind of the embodiment of what you see play out in terms of complicit versus explicit bias and racism. You know what I mean? Like, Gall is just explicit. He's the far right. He's that hard racism. But then on the left, you do have that soft bigotry, that kind of sly racism that I think Sam's character exhibited. And there's that scene where they come together up in the stairwell where they're filming each other. I think that's where that comes out and comes to a head the most, So there's a lot of social commentary in there, but at the end of the day, we're more interested in character than anything. And that's why we took this character. I mean, we just started thinking, like, what would this vile hate monger who's living down here, steeping in this shit every day, all he does is obsessively think about these issues. That's what he would do. When this documentarian comes around, that's what he would do, is just spew this shit all day. We're not going to come up with a bunch of fake plot points to make it feel like a movie when it's this mockumentary trapping, So, I mean, if people are wondering why it feels redundant or one note or whatever, the stuff I'm speaking about speaks to that we wanted it to feel oppressive in
like
one note.
captive.
Yeah, exactly.
Jay put it a good way in a conversation we had earlier that, this being very much a horror film, whereas in a typical horror film, you'd have like the Terminator or a Jason Voorhees or whoever that's unstoppable, but in a physical sense. And this horror character is unstoppable in a verbal sense.
He's a verbal Terminator. You're just stalking and coming at you the whole time, just verbally. It's an assault, We're the hunted, essentially. But this is the era where we equate speech and language with violence. So that's a lot of what the film is about, too. It's juxtaposing actual torture and violence against speech as violence. And it's really interesting to see which offends people more. It seems, anecdotally, that it's the speech that offends people more than scenes of torture, which is
actual violence.
Just fascinating that's where we are in society, And I get it. Like, speech speaks to systemic issues. One act of violence is an act of violence, but speech could, part of it's about how Cactus Jack, what happens when a somewhat, by all accounts, intelligent and even charismatic guy has this bad programming, then he has power. He gets a microphone. He has power to spread these ideas. So in that sense, the pen is mightier than the sword. The speech could be more dangerous and threatening than the violence, but it's still just interesting at what truly repulses people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Question from Andy in the audience. Was there a specific event that inspired you to make this movie or more of a development in society?
Yeah, I think it's more a finger on the pulse, ear to the ground thing. And, pretty much everyone in America has been conscious of racism and hate, it's forever. But yeah, like another thing Jay and I tend to be attracted to is to write what scares us. And we don't believe in ghosts and vampires and that kind of stuff, so it's hard to be scared by them. But this is scary, like the fact that a mind can turn, and either
or that your neighbor can just be festering down in there. And we see it all the time. Look at that guy who showed up in Washington with all the Molotov cocktails and guns. He was completely off the grid. And the FBI says that's the most dangerous threat in America, is these people who we don't even know about. They're not on our radar. They haven't been arrested or in trouble before, but they're just seething somewhere with this bad ideology, and they're amassing arms and shit. And again, I can't think of anything more horrific personally. And I don't think a horror movie has ever really gone there we've called this a horror of rhetoric as well. Like how an idea can be the scariest thing of all. You know what I mean? So I just don't think I've seen a horror movie that does that exactly. So we wanted to do something new with the genre, subvert the genre a little bit.
Are you worried about people who see this film that absolutely agree with everything Cactus Jack was spewing?
Well, those people already feel the way they feel. I don't think this movie is going to turn anyone that way. I think it's just...
I mean, you didn't think the Joker would, do that to a movie theater. What if somebody does that and turns up in a Abe Lincoln mask? You feel any responsibility for that?
I think they probably would still carry out the act either way. It's just that they're wearing a mask. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a distinction, that it's not going to change anyone's behavior. They might, you might have people showing up at rallies dressed like Jack, who the hell knows, whatever. But they're already off the deep end anyway. They're already that person. This is, if they take on the iconography in this film, I don't think there's any blame from this film.
Right. It's like, do you blame the Punisher and Stan Lee when people co-opt the Punisher's logo and you know what I mean?
Yeah. So just people,
now
people
please
just
don't.
Very,
everyone out there
they did.
cool. It's the last thing we would want. If I read something in the news and this guy had this Cactus Jack mask and it would sicken me to my stomach and everything, but I don't think I would feel responsible. I'd just be super disappointed and sad and frustrated, you know. Maybe that's dodging it a little bit, some people might argue, but again, like Chris said, it's like piss is already in the pool in terms of what these people are going to do.
Here's another question from the audience. Matt, what would you like to have done with a bigger budget? That's a good question.
Probably a different movie. This one doesn't probably need much more. You know, I don't know if we would do anything different with this movie. I don't know if Jay has any thoughts on that, but yeah, if we were given a bigger budget, we have, you know, tons and tons of other ideas for projects and things we've already written and such. But
Nate says marketing. That's a good call.
Yeah, marketing's a good point. answer.
It is. Maybe would have got a couple.
Needed more money to make the movie.
It's all post shit. To us, there's that quote: "The enemy of art is the absence of limitations." Like to us, we found it super rewarding, and that's the juice, the creative problem solving. When you have no budget, it makes you think of all these ways. How can we make this one space feel dynamic? Oh, the basement goes through 3 revolutions. It starts as just mom and dad's old shit, and he's living down there, but then it becomes this crazy studio, king of comedy, game show, torture studio, and then podcast studio, and then it becomes this machine gun nest, you know? So we're always thinking of ways to make it dynamic, the way it goes Wizard of Oz style, from when the documentarian controls the cameras, it's black and white, to when Jack gets them, it blows up into color. You know, those are all creative things that you do because you don't have a budget. So to me, I don't know if I would have wanted more money for this on the front end. Gall might have wanted a higher, you know, quality donut than Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. That's about what we lived off for craft services doing this shit. But I feel like post, maybe we could have got the rights to some songs, you know, Hit the Road Jack type shit, or we had a credit song that we would have loved to use. But in the end, we ended up with Antonio, this amazing composer who created this credit song from scratch that sounds like some
so good,
great old song that he unearthed somewhere. Gall was for 45 minutes looking on the internet one night. And he hits me up, what the fuck is the name of that closing credit song? I've been looking for 45 minutes for this song. And I'm like, dude, Antonio made it from scratch, you know, this anachronistic satirical song. So I don't know, man. I would love to make a big budget movie to have stars and shit, but at the same time, I kind of love this operating in this little pool. And can we make these little movies? Chris and I talk all the time about trying to usher in this movement or this era of the creative middle class. Can you make tiny $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 movies and then make just a decent living off of that? Or does it have to be this feast or famine, rags or riches Hollywood thing? You know, it's really hard as a screenwriter to just make a decent living. Yeah, like you have whole years where you don't make shit, and then other years where you're flush, and it's almost a bipolar way to live, financially, fiscally bipolar. But I don't know. I would love to find our audience with this, even if it's this deviant, wacky audience, and then with our next film, do something that's way less of a pressure cooker and, you know, controversial. Like we're talking about doing a romantic comedy for Gall, which of course will subvert that genre as well. But it would be a Punch Drunk Love style romantic comedy, but I'm just saying something way softer and accessible than something like that. So then we can expand that audience, hopefully, and just keep making small movies and make a living, making risky, bold little art flicks, essentially.
All right. Matt asks, for Gull, how did you feel after filming those scenes?
Sorry,
did he drop?
Yeah,
he dropped. Yeah.
Oh, wait for a second.
Whack-a-mole shit in here, dude.
Sydney, can you stand in for Gull?
Oh, we lost Sam too.
Sydney, your mic's on.
Molly says you don't need big stars. Gull killed it.
No, and that's
that's for sure.
That's why he left. I'd love to get some fucking movie star. Dang, he's gone. Dude, come back. I like to think that's made him a star. Like if you see some of the reviews we've gotten, I don't mind not getting the shine. I love him getting the spotlight.
Oh yeah.
But that's been a lot of the praise is his performance, and deservedly so. The dude went balls out, and he is nothing like the character, which is the great irony of it. You know?
One review said he transcended acting in it. Like he really did just inhabit the character, and he is nothing like Jack. I would make that clear at all. Yeah, as Jay said, but he definitely just channeled him. I'm sure the way it was shot too helped with that. The fact that it was so intimate, just most of the time it was Jay. I live in California and I came out for a handful of shoots, but Jay and Gog did the lion's share. But to do it in this, you could see the setting. It was just in a basement with just a phone and no crew and everything. So I'm sure that helped bring that out too, just keeping it so intimate. And
yeah, that was part of the process. And Chris and I discovering the process as well. And this speaks to the bigger budget thing too, that I really like the intimacy of making something with a skeletal crew, if not no crew, like our first day on this, it wasn't even a found footage movie. It was just going to be a normative horror type, kind of arty horror, dramatic thriller. And we had a full crew, camera rentals, all that. It cost like $800 when we had only raised like $5,000 on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And I was just like, this is untenable. There's no way we can do this. But that's so many people when they go to make a do-it-yourself or indie movie, especially like a local production, it's like a lot of playing at making a movie, like the scene of making a movie. And, oh, we need a best boy. We need a gaffer. We need all these fucking people that you see in the credits all the time to really be making a movie. But our whole process is how can we suck as much of that out of it to where it's just us and the actor, especially for, again, tailoring it to a project like this. I don't know if Gall had an audience of people around chewing bubblegum and watching and shit and wondering when craft services is coming up, if he would have went there like he did. So I think it really behooved us to just make it, and plus we shot so piecemeal. It was like 2 hours this day, an hour this day, 4 hours this day, which again, by design, making this do-it-yourself movie, that's why we chose to shoot in our own basement, because we can control the set. I'm like, if it takes 3 years, that's all right. I don't touch this shit. I don't even have to dust. It's perfect. It's supposed to look like shit, So it speaks to it. We're just losing and losing more people, huh?
Yeah, the government is just picking us off one by one.
I think Anonymous fucking after us.
You can hear me. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we'll just have to go without a cam for me from here on out. I think it's when I tab out, because I tabbed over to see what Gall was saying. And every time I do that, I lose my camera and now it won't come back. So
it's hilarious. This is very much like the process of making the movie.
Right.
What the fuck? Oh, the lens kit.
If Missy wants to know where she can watch it, if somebody wants to call that out.
Yeah. You can go to www.cactusjackfilm.com. And we set up a Vimeo store, which we'll update that in a minute. Today's been a whirlwind. I think we have to go back and double check and make sure that links up to our page. But the film is for sale now. It's $4 to rent for 48 hours or $8 to own through Vimeo. So you got to sign up for Vimeo, but it's one click through Google or Facebook. You're in there. And if you purchase the movie for $8, you get to screen it whenever you want on Vimeo forever, or you can download it to your own device. But we'll put links to that stuff up at the end. There he is.
There he is.
Sorry, I had to kill a guy. I'm back.
Okay.
House, I'll text you the link if you can post it to the
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So here's a question for you guys, and anybody can answer this. How much ad-libbing was there in this film?
Not much.
No, really?
Yeah, a little bit, like at the top of the stairs. But I would tell them what
the
to
exchange.
Like I would tell Gall, keep asking him about this. I would give him the hot pokers to poke Sam with, and then Sam would just have to respond essentially. And even the stuff in the car, I really wanted this naturalistic thing going on, especially with the mockumentary of it all. So when Sam is sitting in the car, I would just give him a couple talking points like Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm and let him go, but all the stuff Gall says, all those hate monologues, I scripted all that shit.
Okay.
And
yeah, the car scene, I thought, man, that's got to be ad-lib. That's so good. Like,
yeah, so naturalistic, right?
Yeah.
It's by design. And those speeches, though, part of it is that Gall or Jack himself, he doesn't really speak. It's propaganda. Yeah. It's all rehearsed. It's all speeches. He basically fancies himself a Hitler at the microphone, you know what I mean? And the movie starts with him. He's been calling into these radio shows until he said so much vile shit that he's got screened out of all of them. So now he's just this caged animal down there. He can't even call these shows anymore, because if you notice in the film, he's just sharing tapes of these radio shows. He's not calling into them live. He's been screened out. So he's been down here for months just stewing and has no outlet for this shit until this guy comes along. And he's like, oh my God, camera's on me. I'm a star. And he's just lets loose with all his awful shit until eventually that's not enough. He wants control of the cameras. He wants his own show. He wants the microphone, and he's got those notebooks. So he's scripted all the shit. Even the stuff when he makes this rant and screed on a radio show, he's reading from a notebook, you know? So you'll see when the host interrupts him, he's like, and then he goes right back on to what he was saying because he was reading it, you know?
Yeah, the only time he really talks like a person is when he's talking about his dad and the rings, and the story about his mom when he was a kid. But otherwise, yeah, he's pontificating the whole time.
Propaganda, man, which is so much of what this shit is, this hate speech or whatever. And, you know, there might be a couple things where he starts talking and you're like, oh, there's kind of a kernel of truth in there. Like, depending on what your views are. Like, I'm lefty, I'm progressive, humanist, but at the same time, I'm not down with the cancel culture movement. Obviously, I wouldn't have made a movie like this if I was. But, so he might start with a grain of truth on a subject like that, but very quickly he's taking it off the rails because everything's filtered through this hate lens. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Molly says, I want to know what happened to the tooth scene. Of course, the infamous tooth scene that was in the trailer we didn't see in the final film.
Yeah, that's remember that Iron Man trailer where he's like, you complete me to Pepper or whatever Potts, and he jumps out of the plane. Mm-hmm. It's just this cute little scene. It's in the trailer. It was never in the movie. It's one of those. Hollywood's littered with those, you know, cool little trailer moments. You're like, wait, it's not in the fucking movie. The teeth scene is one of those, but what happened is everyone who's seen the movie knows he had a fucked up grill. His teeth were jacked. And that was part of it when we cast him. We're like, this guy's down here. He's not practicing good hygiene. He's, you know, whatever. It speaks to issues.
Brushing his teeth where he shits.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Gall practices good hygiene, but he'd happened to be in a car wreck that fucked his teeth up, people. It's not like he doesn't brush his teeth or say,
I wasn't a meth head or anything.
Right. He got in a car wreck, he fucking smashed his teeth, and they were just slowly spreading apart and everything. And we kind of knew we had this timeline. We're like, man, his teeth are an issue. And they started getting bad. And at one point, he was going to get them fixed finally, which was a whole nother production hurdle. You got this dude with his teeth, and he's going to come back with fucking Jack Nicholson teeth or whatever.
Bitcoin went way up.
So,
for Jack.
Yeah, right. And luckily, we had already come up with this idea that he would be in a mask for a lot of the movies, so that helped cover shit once the teeth were fixed.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But the tooth thing was because he was getting them fixed. And I'm like, dude, can you pull one out? Like, what if you just pull a tooth? I don't know if it was his idea or mine, but we concocted this together. Like, he should pull a tooth, man, on screen, a fucking real tooth he pulls out or whatever. That'd be gnarly, dude. And went to do the scene, did it, but in the end, you know, they say there's 3 movies: the one you write, which we sort of did this time, the one you shoot, and then the one you cut. And in the 3rd movie, when we were cutting it, Nate himself pointed out, watching a rough cut, like, this tooth scene doesn't really make sense. It's cool, it's gnarly, and he was right. It's like we had to come up with scenes to motivate the tooth scene. We had to come up with Sam headbutting him to knock a tooth loose, to then, but it was all, there's just that little slight feeling that it's not, you know what I mean?
It wasn't just that, dude. Like, the next cut was like one of the only 2 shots that you see Gull's Jack Nicholson teeth in. So like we were cutting right to that, and so you saw like the teeth up close, and then suddenly he's like looking up at the camera like this, and you know,
you don't really notice.
So I don't think you would ever notice it if we didn't show the teeth
Draw
in that
attention.
way right beforehand, and that was my main concern.
And don't look at teeth.
It may be a bonus feature in the future, though. We will be adding some of those to the deleted scene.
Somebody should share their screen and show it right now because it's gnarly as shit. But it didn't work for the movie, I don't think.
Yeah. It was right to pull it. And once you pull it, you're like, oh shit, this kind of syncs up better without it anyway. You know, those little happy accidents you find. Silver linings.
As writers and creators, you have to kill your darlings, as I think Hemingway said sometimes, you know, things that you, because I loved that, you know, the idea of that, seeing him pull his tooth on the screen, but it sometimes you do have to just sacrifice those things that you love to make the greater sound better.
Yeah, for sure.
You should have seen the scenes where we had him pulling out Sam's toenails and fingernails with pliers. Like, really did it. We had to cut that too.
Wow, that's dedication. Elias asks, why is Sam credited as Samson K? I think Sam is just short for Samson, isn't it?
Well, not that any of us can pronounce his name, as we saw in the very beginning of this.
Yeah.
He told me his name is spelled a little differently. We used him in a short film like 10 years ago, the first short film we ever made. And he was fucking amazing, the best thing in it. Always loved this guy. And once we pivoted, like I said, we started this, it wasn't a found footage movie. Because of that first expensive, crazy day, we're like, we need to suck this way down. Let's go found footage. Let's do this. Let's do that. Oh, well, shit, we can bring in this documentarian character. And boom, Sam was the guy. We knew immediately. I wish he was in here still to speak to it, but I think he was kind of scared of the movie a little bit, maybe. I don't want to speak for him, but he was going with a pseudonym, Samson K. The last day or so, even through the premiere, which apparently whoever asked this question saw the premiere, that's how he was credited. As we're about to make sales live and go out with the final cut of the movie, I was like, one more time, dude, you sure you don't want your name on this shit? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So, Sam Cozay, I guess.
I said cozy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Dude, I was considering a pseudonym up until 6 months ago. So.
Yeah. Everyone's considered pseudonyms except us and Gall, I think, at some point or another.
Yeah.
Some people went with him and came back and, which made me happy. You don't want everyone working on your movie to be using false names. You're like, oh shit, what are we doing here? Like just some criminal gang or something. I'm the only one taking credit for the crime. What the fuck's going on? And you want everyone to believe in the project, which they did, but it speaks not to anyone on the team or their courage or anything. It speaks to society,
right?
And what society's become, and part of what the movie is about, and everything. This cancellation culture that you can't make art that comments on reality. Like I think our greatest crime with this movie is showing racism for what it is in a way that no other movie has dared to really do.
And ironically, that's art's job, is to bring this stuff to the surface and provoke and question, these societal ills.
So I'm glad he put his name back on it. I hope people recognize him, and he gets more work out of it because I think he was fucking awesome. As important as Gall is, that role is crucial as well. And he went there. I mean, he's like letting us shave his head and fucking, you know what I mean? It's like a Hitler mustache.
I waterboarded him. He got waterboarded.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if that was real, if that waterboarding was real. Really? Yeah. Oh my god.
Laying on a weight bench. We had a towel around his face, and he was on a weight bench on his back. And I'm pouring a jug of water on his mouth.
I mean, he's holding his breath. So we only did it for a second, but he didn't have a rag in his mouth like traditional. He didn't get Christopher Hitchens or anything, but we put him through the ringer, man, for sure. And a lot of those scenes just getting tortured him like tiger balm in the eyes, and none of that shit's fun. Especially coming in at the last second. We actually went through so many pivots in this movie where we had these epiphanies, and part of that comes from the fact that we didn't script this for once, even though we're writers by trade. We kind of wanted the freedom to make this the truest, most character-driven thing ever, where we didn't at all want to predetermine where he takes it or where he goes, and then make him behave in certain ways. That's kind of what the tooth shit was. You know what I mean? You're making him behave in a certain way just because you came up with this cool idea or whatever. So we wanted to just be like, where would he be at mentally this day? The last time him and the documentarian talked, it ended bad. So when he shows up this time, he's out to get him immediately. You know what I mean? And just played with it fluidly like that. And a lot of the speech, again, would just come from me throughout the process as we made the movie, continually doing research on all these shithead sites like Stormfront and fucking National Vanguard or whatever. Some of them I forget the names of, even because it's been like 3 years since I dug down into that hole. But
hey Jay, do you want to talk about how you set up that fake Twitter alias for yourself where you were basically doing that? That was pretty insane.
That was nuts. Shout out to Thunder who was a production assistant, but he helped with he was kind of our little factotum in this film. He was helping us for a second too with his social media account where we're like, let's do a lot of this is experimental. The film itself is experimental. How can we market this experimentally? What if we start tweeting as Jack? What if we create Jack's Twitter account and start tweeting as him and put a couple small videos out and shit? And dude, it was frightening how quickly it took off. I mean, we post on social media, hey, we got this awesome movie that just got this good review. No one gives a shit. But man, the second you say something about hate, it takes off like wildfire, and it's fucking scary. And we felt that whole Ben Parker with great power comes great responsibility, and that really hit home the power of social media, especially when it comes to negative, bad ideas. That shit's always easier to sell than positivity to a degree, you know? There's all these lost, broken souls out there just hungry for this shit. So, man, it took off thousands of followers. It just took off retweets, hundreds of retweets. And we only did it for like 2 weeks. Then we pulled the plug on it, and I issued a statement saying this shit was fake. We want nothing to do with it. You know, and we felt like we might have really then been complicit in something. If somebody had done something because we directly said it to the real world, not with a character saying it to characters, that shit gets iffy.
Yeah, we wanted to be careful not to lionize the character too much too, you know, and to like market it through the character too much, as if like, you know, it like to paint him in a way that made it too like even fun or something, you know what I mean? But to just, it's a character study foremost. It's not about creating this popular character, you know. There's a difference there.
Yeah. Here's a question from Gull from Matt. For Gull, how did you feel after filming these scenes? How did you disassociate from such a vile, hateful character?
It took a minute. It did. It's hard to do because it's, you know, in order to do it effectively, you kind of fully immerse in the character, and it's to be that disgusting is an undertaking. It really is. It was hard. It was difficult. I always hate it when actors say, "Oh my God, that was so hard. It was so difficult. It took so much out of me." But it was so hard. It was so fucking difficult, and it took so much out of me.
We go further than any. I mean, this may be the most vile character in the history of cinema. I mean, tell me, who's worse? Tom, House? What's a worse character than Jack in film? Can you name one?
I'm sure some Hitlers in film might be worse than Jack, but
right. I just mean as far as repulsive.
Fucking
worst by design, but
yeah.
I mean, and credit to him too, because we would take these long breaks. Chris and I would go out pitching a TV show or, you know, doing meetings and shit. And it's like, all right, Paul, pause on this thing you've been immersing yourself in, and then go back to normal life. And then, oh, I'm back in town. Get your fucking hate monger back on, you know, jump back in. It's tough.
Yeah. So, Gull, did you ever bring Jack home with you? Did you ever get so into character that you couldn't get out of it?
No,
because I know you are a really nice guy. You're the most.
I really am.
Not like Jack. You know, you're nothing like Jack in real life.
No. He's a dick, but he's not like a hate monger. You've seen his comedy. He's not Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah, he's a stand-up. He's a stand-up comic. If Cactus Jack is a stand-up comic.
So, but he had that edge, is what I'm saying. That's why we cast him. This guy has an edge, but he's not a fucking monster and a piece of shit like Jack. He's not a hate monger. He doesn't have a malicious bone in his body, but he can damn sell it, you know?
Yep.
Every scene, remember we would end those scenes and just look at each other and shudder and just like, I'm feeling so icky and just like, all right, man, get out of here so I can take a shower.
Yeah, it was super gross.
It was so gross. It was bad. It was bad.
Andy asks, is American History X, Man Bites Dog, Falling Down an inspiration? What would you name as inspiring?
All of those for sure. Love all those movies. Sydney, our manager, Falling Down is one of the movies we're like, all right, this dude, I think you mentioned Falling Down in one of our early conversations. We're like, all right, let's go with this guy.
Taxi Driver, Natural Born Killers, Talk Radio was mentioned. Yeah. Oliver Stone featuring a lot there. Yeah, you see.
Creep.
Yeah.
You know, which came later. We saw it after, but I'm saying those kind of movies. Man Bites Dog would definitely be in play, but
Apt Pupil.
Yeah.
Apt Pupil.
Yeah. 76 Juliet Band says, wicked bass skills. Gull, want to start a band?
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Fire your bass player. I'll go out and play some rock together and shit. 76 Juliet is a great band. They're a great Milwaukee area cover band.
Awesome.
Check them out when live music gets to exist again.
Yeah, for sure. Sweet. For sure. But you have to play in your underpants. That's a rule.
Is there another way to do it?
Yeah,
no.
Right?
No.
Lee would say no underpants.
Right.
Oh my
Just
God.
a sock, right?
Andy asks, what came first, the political aspect or the shocking one? So did you bring about making another genre about the same topic? What was the intention?
Well, when we first conceived of this, we were thinking, we had just come off of doing a short film just between the two of us, this little Edgar Allan Poe-ish kind of meets The Shining thing about a guy in a house kind of going crazy. And we were like, what can we do next that's a little bigger? You know, maybe we weren't necessarily thinking feature film at the time, but we were just thinking, well, maybe it could just be a guy who starts a podcast, social media show, and it takes off. And well, what would be interesting about that? You know, so it started from the conceit of us just doing something really small and that we can control, you know, the circumstances, etc. What can you do with such limited, you know, aspects to it?
And how can you blow the scope up without leaving the room? Like a podcast brings the world in, the media.
Right.
You know, they say don't bring in the media, don't bring in the that's like a screenwriting term to keep your story small. You don't want to bring in the media, but it's like, no, how can we do something really small but make it feel big and bring in the media, you know?
And then it kept getting bigger from there, and the character kept growing and, you know, taking on a persona of its own. But yeah, when it was originally conceived, it wasn't necessarily in this form. Yeah, it started just as just that sort of high concept of a guy who's got a megaphone from his basement, and what can he do? How can he change the world? And
what if he pisses off so many people that then someone's coming for him?
Backlash, yeah.
Which initially, before we switched to bringing Sam back in, we had this huge epiphany, like I was saying earlier, halfway through production, where we had kind of finished the movie, and I'm just sitting with it for months. And I know some people were like, what the fuck are you doing with this movie, dude? Are you going to finish it? And it just didn't sit right in my
I was one of those people.
Yeah. That's part of the reason it took so long. And I was just like, no, I'm not putting out the wrong story. We haven't found it yet. Stephen King talks about unearthing the fossil, you know, how I felt like we had found some bones, but we hadn't unearthed the whole skeleton yet or anything. We didn't know what it was. And then I just had the epiphany one day where what he did initially was at midpoint where he snaps and kills his mom. This is spoilers, but I don't know why you're watching this shit if you didn't see the movie. But he snaps, he kills his mom, and he imprisons the documentarian. Initially, he killed them both. He killed his mom, and then he killed the guy for being a witness, and then he has the cameras, and he just starts making his own show. But it was kind of like, where do you go from there? This dude just keeps talking shit, and then eventually somebody comes for him. And the way it ended was with us stuck in the bunker down there with his static camera, and we have him go upstairs, and then there's this huge fucking epic, like, heat level shootout. I wanted the biggest shootout ever that completely took place off screen. It's like, what if you're sitting in this room for 5 minutes just listening to this open range gun battle and shit going on up there? I thought it'd be crazy and cool. But eventually, once we brought that character back in, we're like, no, it's not a horror movie at that point. You know, there's no stakes for anybody. But once we brought the character back in, there's at least some stakes. Is he going to live or die? Is he going to escape? Is Jack going to kill him? You know, there's a rooting interest to a degree. So then it was only fitting that he got to kill Jack at the end, you know?
Yeah, originally you were never going to see the documentarian character.
Right, he just got killed off screen.
Everything's off screen. There wasn't that, there was nothing. There wasn't that two-way one up the stairs. There was nothing. He was just going to be a voice like the mother.
Yeah, it was just a voice. That was when we were really small and everything. And then the movie did start getting bigger, but man, it's way better for it.
Yeah, you talked about the ending. I thought that, you know, the ending was so kind of ironic. You know, all through the movie, Jack is, you know, this big talker. You know, he's ready. He's prepared. He's going to take on the world. You know, the world can come after him. And in the end, he goes out like a bitch. You know,
he gets killed by this one-handed dude who's probably never shot a gun before.
Right.
One-handed.
Right, and Jack's down in there. He hasn't eaten for days except a couple spiders. He's huffing liquid wrench. He's off his game for sure. You know what I mean? So when he gets to the top of the stairs, he probably doesn't even notice that homeboy took that 357 that Jack taped to the door. You know what I mean? So when he kicks the door open, he thinks he's just going in to kill. Didn't even occur to him. He underestimated Chris Sandberg to the point that it was inconceivable that he would end up losing this firefight. And he does it immediately. It's just like, it's not even a fire. We went from having the biggest off-screen firefight ever to just like, boom, he's dead. Just funny.
Yeah, that was effective.
It felt more real too. I've seen some people say that, you know, some of the turns in this are kind of cliche, but that's to us just because yeah, we're going for verisimilitude. We're going for authentic reality. And that's probably how this shit would play out. It wouldn't be all these twists and turns and shocking events, you know what I mean, that just bamboozle you and show how clever we are as storytellers. It's like, nah. The dude would eventually cut his fucking hand that's been tourniqueted to the point where it might not even bleed that much. You know what I'm saying? He's got this half dead, bloated hand he cuts off and escapes. I like the way it ends.
Missy asks, have you tried to talk with Travis Scott in doing a collaboration with his record label?
Won't answer our calls, man. No, we haven't. I don't know if anyone else will speak on this. The Cactus Jack thing is ironic because, again, we started this movie in like 2015 and had named it Cactus Jack way back then, not even knowing about Mick Foley. We didn't know any of this shit. We had a friend who used to come over all the time and just hang out in the basement and talk, and he'd bring us weird shit once in a while, just gifts that, you know, kind of unsolicited shit. But one of them was this picture he had drawn of this kind of curmudgeonly Bukowski looking character, and he had named it Cactus Jack. So that purely came from us doing that Robert Rodriguez shit. You know that shit in a Family Guy where they're like, what's your name? And he's like trying to think of a name that's not Peter Griffin. So he looks around for clues and he sees a P on a table. P, and then he sees a Griffin or whatever. He says Peter Griffin. That's what we did. We looked around the room like, what should we name this or call this dude? Yeah, fucking Cactus Jack. That's cool. Oh, you're a prickly one, Jack. You know what I mean? And then we find out about Mick Foley. Everyone we say it to, like, fucking Mick Foley's going to be mad. And then Travis Scott, 2 years later, decided to start using this Cactus Jack thing. So you took it and ran with it, Travis Scott. If you somehow listen to this, you blew it up. You were crushing it. But thanks for the hashtags, I guess.
Yeah. There you go. Well, I mean, the name's been around for a long,
and that's the other thing.
time.
Kirk Douglas made a movie, The Villain, this old Western in 79, I think it was, that the Australian title was Cactus Jack, and it's kind of an Americana, Pecos Bill type thing. And there was
I think it started with some Texas governor was nicknamed Cactus Jack or some
vice president to...
That's it, yeah.
Who was it? Eisenhower?
Yeah.
FDR?
FDR.
VP to FDR.
Something like that, yeah. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Just don't come for us, Travis.
I will do a public televised shovel fight with him if he wants to.
Shovel. Man, it was hilarious too, because
me and him and shovels.
I wasn't even aware of his Cactus Jack shit until one day I'm driving and I saw like the Cactus Jack meal at McDonald's. I was like, did the hologram just fuck up? What is happening? I don't know. And then I looked it up. I was like, Travis Scott. Oh shit! All right, it's pretty funny.
So that spider scene, was that a real dead spider that Gull put in his mouth? Did he actually eat it, or did he spit it out?
This one's a visual for those just listening. Gull's just nodding his head to all of it.
yeah. That day was brutal. That day, in addition to eating the spider, there was
the toilet.
It was
Oh god.
It was
well, this is from the proof of concept.
You look into the abyss. The abyss also looks at you. Go ahead.
That I had to put my head in. It hadn't been cleaned since the Carter administration. It was so cold down there that someone's whole job that day was between takes, because I was in my fucking underwear most of the time. Someone's job that day was between takes to hold a heater up to me. It was unbelievable.
Well, that was from the proof of concept.
Yeah.
Yes,
which Nate up in the corner there, he was like our little fairy godfather who gave us the seed money to first make a proof of concept for this that we even then could take to crowdfund. So he's been fucking crucial from the get-go. Maybe you could ask him like why he ever wanted to take this insane ride. But so we shot that proof of concept in someone else's basement.
Can't answer that. It's been 5 years, dude.
Yeah. Well, we shot it in someone else's basement, which was part of what inspired us to say, you know what, fuck it, I'm doing this in my own basement because I can't deal with scheduling and can we come over and all, you know what I mean? And totally understandable. I wouldn't want some film crew coming in my basement, let alone shooting this shit, right? So we're down in this really old, like 1800s Wisconsin farmhouse type basement. Yeah, that toilet was despicable, the dead spiders, but Gall went all out. But this speaks to the do-it-yourself nature of it too. In the end, we did lift some shots from the proof of concept. We felt no shame in lifting some shots from the proof of concept to use in the film later, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the spider eating was one of them.
That's I don't know if I don't think I would do that, but I mean, you pulled your tooth, you eat spiders. I mean, that is dedication.
That's me, man. You should see some of the shit that never made it in the movie, that never made it in the trailer. Just kidding.
Give this man some awards.
Well, I hope some of those deleted scenes are gonna end up on the DVD or some kind of extras somewhere.
That would be awesome.
Vimeo has
ending that we shot.
Yeah,
like the original ending we shot, where
which one?
Stairs. The one on the stairs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Before we brought back the documentarian.
Yeah, that was cool. A long, slow death. Now he just gets blasted with this 357 Magnum. But what happened in the original, when we had this massive epic shootout upstairs, is that he takes them all out. And you're like, but there's this moment, you're like, oh shit, is he dead? Is everyone dead? Is everything settled? There's just smoke coming out of the doorway up there, And then he stumbles out. And he's trying to make his way back down to his mics to basically tell the world, fuck you didn't get me. But he dies like this slow 3-minute long agonizing death on the stairs, which was great too, because there's just this pathetic death for this guy who's talked so much shit. And I think it would have been satisfying to see him writhing in pain and shit, and cathartic for people. But, once we had pivoted the story, you've got to do what's true to what these characters are up to. So.
Elias asks, how do you explain Cactus Jack's incredibly well-crafted shows when the only filmmaker in the basement is tied up with other things? Was he outsourcing?
Well, there's a lot of Spielberg fucking pan up and shit. So we have a few of those shots in there, hoping it would infer that he's put Chris Sandberg to use as his cinematographer and such. And so there are some higher production value shots of him that we like to think people would infer that Sam shot, or the character Chris Sandberg shot, up here Spielberg, all that shit. But then there's lower production value shots that it's a lot of handheld, like when Jack's saying, welcome to my studio audience, that's him just doing these crude whips and shit with the camera. But
yeah, and as for the montages and all that kind of stuff, he could do that himself like YouTubers do nowadays. A lot of the editing side, he could have just been, what else is he doing down there? He has gulfs of time to just obsess over, putting his shows together. And, he was making his money from Bitcoin and stuff. So he's a smart dude, and he could figure out the software and how to, do all the production stuff, post-production on his.
Yeah, at one point we were toying with
that too,
of having just takes in there, blown takes, where he's like, oh, fuck it, I'm going to redo it, redo it. Or he beats the shit out of Chris Sandberg for fucking up a shot or something, where it was more overt. But if you notice the movie at this point, the way we ended up cutting it, it's like you got thrown in a Whitewater Rapids river and the current just takes you. And those kind of slowdowns just didn't feel right as far as the pacing went,
Yeah, clearly Jack made those videos and social media posts 5 years ago, because if you made them today, he'd be banned in an instant.
Right,
So,
no doubt.
Exactly.
So he lucky time. Missy says, you're an inspiration to all filmmakers that want to make a success of their talents. Nothing holds you back. And Missy hasn't even seen the film yet.
Yeah.
So
well, that's awesome, because I don't know Missy either, so it's not some friend blowing smoke up our asses. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, this is for either Chris or Jay. What was the worst or the hardest part of making this film?
You want the honest truth?
Yeah, the honest
real
truth.
life, paying bills, day jobs. That's the thing about this do-it-yourself shit. It's weekend warrior. Fit it in when you can. It almost has to be like, we joke that this movie of hate is a labor of love. But it almost has to be to ever see it through. I mean, especially to take years. It's absurd almost. It's almost like some Charlie Kaufman, Synecdoche, New York type shit, But that's it, man. I was coming off of chemotherapy, which was part of the reason when people ask us, why did you make such a crazy, ballsy, bold movie? I felt like I had a new lease on life, I'm not worried about social ramifications. Fuck everybody. We're going to make the most artistic, just rugged, gnarly movie we can that goes places most movies wouldn't dare, So yeah, that coming off the chemo thing, like I said, lean years in Hollywood. So we had some lean years in there and then some good years as we were making the film. And that's the hardest stuff. As far as the filmmaking side goes, capturing sound's a pain in the ass when you do it yourself. I will admit, there was a point in the movie where I was like, fuck it, I'm going to just get a lot of this in camera, and I'm shooting with a phone. So if you think our movie sounds all right, I hate to be George Lucas with the tears, but we'll fix it in post thing. We'll put the tears in post. You could do a lot in post if you get the right guy. We got Diego Young, this young sound mixer, came in. He rescued the sound, a lot of it at the end in post. I would not have had the skills on my own. Chris, maybe he's more of a sonic audio musician guy, but I know I wouldn't have had the skills to polish that sound that we had captured up to the level that it ended up as. So I'll say sound is one of the hardest things, but for the most part, man, and everyone out there knows it's true. If you're trying to make any kind of films, it's just real life and the day job and the grind and all that shit's the hardest part, man.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
What are you doing with your lighting or effects up there, Nate? I'm looking at your picture. Somehow you look like Clark fucking Gable up there. That's a great shot you got going. I'm looking. I'm like, is that real?
I've done like 19 episodes of my series up here, so I've been playing with the lighting for the last 4 months.
Oh, it's fantastic! I love
Yeah,
it.
check out Reentry, his podcast about breaking back into Hollywood. Reentry.
Yeah, Nate was a screenwriter, broke in, had a big option, had some potential gigs lined up, and just Hollywood did its thing on him like it does on all of us, and he ended up stepping away for a few years, and now he's back trying to make movies and everything. In the meantime, he had thrown money our way for this, but now he's back.
Yeah, essentially, it's super weird timing that Jack is coming out at the same time, because I thought I was out of this game completely like 3 or 4 years ago, and I had already kind of gotten involved in Jack and whatever, but now I'm getting back at it myself again, so it's cool timing.
How pissed was your wife at giving us that money and then just taking years to did you just throw your money away?
She was super supportive. I actually sent her a text from work today. I was like, I just want to say thanks again. I know it's been 5 years, but like, I can't believe like you were open to me doing that, because I'm really grateful that we were able to make this thing happen.
That's awesome. Same to my wife, Amber, filming this shit in her basement and her finding like Sam's clumps of hair and fake blood stuck to the floor and shit. She found some gnarly shit down here.
Anyway. So here's a question for Gull. Now, a lot of actors say that they play their roles so well that they'll have people come up, like especially if somebody plays a villain, people will mistake the actor for the villain and come up and assault these actors because they played such an effective villain. Are you afraid that that's going to happen to you if like some?
I wasn't.
Okay, well, I'm sorry I planted that. I'm sorry I planted that in there, but
I mean, at first, for like while we were filming, and then shortly after we finished, I was concerned about stuff like that. But I mean, people are. I don't think anybody who would be stupid enough to think that that's really real.
About crazy
probably doesn't have the capacity to leave their house.
Yeah, there are crazy people out there.
The Nurse Betty shit,
Yeah.
Well, I hope not. That would suck.
Because you're a nice guy. You would give a totally not Cactus Jack kind of a response to that.
Just smile at him like you got the wrong guy. See?
Yeah, they'll see his teeth. I got the wrong guy. He's got teeth.
Oh yeah, smile big, man. That's your.
I'm 60 pounds heavier and I have teeth.
Yeah, he gained a lot of weight. That was something.
He batting weight.
Yeah, when we cast him, you could see him in the movie, skeletal. Which coming back near the end to shoot that last shit over again, like damn, he's put on like 30 pounds. We got to try and hide this.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the reason that we edit it with such a swift pace, is just to hide weight gains and new teeth and shit, so you don't get a chance to look at them.
All the stuff where you see Sam I was like 50 pounds heavier, like 40, 50 pounds heavier at that point. And you can tell, like the scene where I'm going to feed him the beans.
Yeah.
You can almost see my big fat stomach.
We're all black. It's slimming.
The nice thing is I don't think anybody's looking at that by that point in the movie.
I wasn't. Yeah, I completely didn't notice it. But now when I watch it again, I'll notice it.
It was off screen, but Cactus Jack was ordering Uber Eats. Or was that around Taco Bell?
Right.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, and I really liked how you showed the passage of time through showing the cans of food. That was pretty clever.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Who
time
played the
passage
shirt?
is an interesting thing too.
Who played the shirtless masked Jack?
Oh,
Me.
that's him. We didn't have a big crew or a cast. It was him and
I just found if anybody wants to see it, 'cause I can't seem to share my screen, but I found the old lookbook. I'm
oh
like,
yeah, the original.
where you had an image of him in front of an American flag with the Abe Lincoln mask on. Like, that was skeletal, man. But I just tweeted that out with the link for this. If anybody wants to see it.
Oh gosh, thanks.
Yeah, but those images, that's probably some of the shit they got Nate interested. It's just
It
provocative,
totally is, man.
crazy
Absolutely. There was a vision, It was like, okay, this is going to be something. And I had already read enough of your work by that point. Jay and Chris are incredible writers. The type of writing that I still aspire to. And, that combined with the lookbook, it was like, okay, this is going to be something.
shit. And eventually it was.
5 years later.
Time flies.
No, it's an awesome film. Tom, I've been asking all the questions. Do you have any questions?
Anything for Sydney?
No, most of what I was doing today was just getting out of everybody's way and kind of listening.
Well, can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Ask the crew. Sydney, what did you think when we went to focus on making this shit of all things versus some possibly $1 million spec? There's a couple specs we were working on that, if we get right, could sell for some big money. Where you're just like, are we your problem child clients and shit, or what?
Good question. I think the thing that I've learned over the years from doing this is you can never tell clients what to do. It's maybe the worst possible move ever. And I'm always of the mind of, if you're passionate about something, you need to do it, because those are the things that ultimately are the things that win the day. There's absurd projects you can try and maybe they don't turn out, but you learn from the experience. And sometimes you do the thing you think is going to be the slam dunk. This is going to sell for $1 million, and then no one buys it. And then you feel like shit because you spent just as much time working on it and no one's bought it. And you're like, God, that was a waste of time. I wish I could have that time back. And, one of the most precious things any creative has is time, because you're making a choice. If Jay and Chris and Michael go, I'm going to do this, that means there's 5 other things they're not going to do because they're not available and they're focusing on this project. So that choice is a huge one. Where you're putting your time is basically saying where you're putting your life. That's why they call it the creative life, because all these projects you do are a marker for your time on this planet and how you spent it, And I've always respected immensely where the guys have come from in terms of their choices, because they're just marching to things that excite them and what they want to do. And as a producer and as a manager, that's what I get excited about, is when I have clients that are crazy about an idea. Even if I don't understand it, I want to try to support it. I mean, if they come to me and say, hey, we need money and I'm tired of, driving around Uber, I'm like, well, maybe you want to write something more commercial. Mm-hmm. But if I don't have the clients saying to me that they have that financial stressor, or they feel like they have to write something where they're going to make money, I let clients make their choices. I mean, Jay and Chris will tell you this, when they were repped by another agency, when I was managing them, the guy used to say, send me a bunch of log lines and I'll tell you which ones I like. And the guys would literally write like 20 log lines and he'd write back, nope. It'd be like one response, like one, nope. And then they would just like go, fuck, dude, there's some good shit there. And I'd be like, I know. I go, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. So then they would be like another bunch of ideas, and it would be the same shit. And I would just be like, you just need to write what you're excited about.
Some of those ideas, like, we had a TV show we had option with the Weinsteins before Harvey shit hit the fan. Like, that's one of those ideas that's on that list that the agent's just like, nope. And then one day you're like, fuck it, we're going to write it anyway. And you end up doing something with it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's the great line from, Adventures in Screen Trade, William Goldman. No one knows anything. And that's true. We all try to put a science on things because we're trying to make sense of our lives and give it structure. There you go. But if you run around and say, who the fuck knows all day long, it gives people a lot of anxiety. People want to feel like they know things. Certainly in the film and TV business, there is a structure to how things work. But in terms of what the guys are doing, they're completely off the grid. So they have complete creative autonomy, which is, I told them, like, enjoy this. I never told them what to put in the film or not put in the film. They would show me cuts and I'd be like, if this is the movie you want to make, then that should be in there. I never said take that shot out. I'd be like, well, I don't love that torture scene, or I think this goes too far or something, but it's your cut, because you're never going to get final cut with a studio. Right. So I'm not going to note you on this film. Jesus Christ, that'd be the worst fucking thing ever. I'm like, just do the movie you want to make and we'll see where the chips fall,
Which is, again, part of the reason we did it, because we've been through that process where even when you sell a pitch, like we had this movie we were writing for Zac Efron, the serial killer movie, that, man, after a couple drafts, it's not even the story we even pitched and sold. Like, what the fuck are we writing here? There's this famous book, what was that book, Monster? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's a screenwriting book. John Gregory Dunn, or what's that dude's name? You know what I'm talking about?
The Didions?
Yeah, and he's talking about, Joan Didion is his wife. Right?
Yeah.
Where'd I go?
There was that movie Up Close and Personal, right? Is that what it was? Robert Redford.
Up Close and Personal. Michelle Pfeiffer and Robert Redford.
Just 27 drafts of this. It's an amazing screenwriting book if you want to know how Hollywood development works, where it just started as one thing, and by the end, it started as this story that's based on a true story. I think it might have been that reporter chick who had killed herself and shit on screen or whatever, but which they eventually made a movie of. But by the end of it, it's like a romantic comedy. That's what Hollywood does to these stories, So
well,
you start out.
I will say this. I think that, I'm aligned with the Thorntons because one of our favorite films and filmmaker is Werner Herzog's Burden of Dreams. We always talk about that movie, and I used to say, this is your Burden of Dreams. This is your freaking Fitzcarraldo here. We need to be making the documentary of you trying to make this movie, because we always laugh. I mean, there's that famous scene in the doc. He's like, Herzog's out in the jungle and everything's going wrong. We cast the movie, like, just a fucking disaster. And he's like, I hate this film because it's ruined my life. And then he like takes the beat and he goes, but I love it. Yep. And that's like filmmaking. Like one day you just want to blow your brains out, and 20 seconds later you're like, oh, but I love it.
Then you get a good shot and you're just like, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want Werner Herzog to narrate my life.
Fuck yeah.
Right?
Screw Morgan.
If anybody knows Werner Herzog, show him this movie.
Yeah. I'd love to see what he thinks.
Yeah.
Werner Herzog was a big inspiration, not just in his work, but for a while he had that, what was it called? Like the Thieves Guild of Filmmaking, Thieves School or something?
Yeah.
The Rogue School of Filmmaking.
Rogues, yeah.
Where he was like, he was going to hand select, like people should send him applications, essentially, whatever they wanted, like a fucking poem or whatever would be their application. And then he would hand pick them to join his little, conclave, this little cadre of artists running around who would meet in certain locations on the globe. And he would teach them to pick locks and shit to get on the locations to film guerrilla style without fucking permits and everything. I mean, that dude's a hero.
What was that thing where Joaquin Phoenix like crashed his car on Laurel Canyon and Werner Herzog was driving by and literally pulled him out of the car because he had like some freaking crowbar?
Yes.
And then he like drove away.
Herzog's ready to roll, dude.
Yeah. It's a crazy story, but like that's like his thing. He's funny to follow on Twitter, by the way.
I completely believe that. I completely believe Werner Herzog carries a crowbar around.
Literally ate his shoe.
Yeah, he did.
Boiled a leather shoe and ate that shit.
Yeah.
Madman.
Yeah, he talked about the gay penguins and what movie was that? Yeah. What documentary was that? Whatever. It's about penguins. But Grizzly Man is probably March of Penguins. That's it. Yeah, he talked about the gay penguins. Penguins turning gay.
Yeah.
Missy asks, when starting out, did people try to take advantage of you?
In Hollywood, that's why we did this shit. Yeah. I mean, not really on this film. It's so small. Or if you mean in our careers, yeah.
There's a lot of just
openly about one of the first assignments we ever took. We took polish money which is essentially illegal with the guild, which it did come into play later. But that's what a lot of Hollywood is. If you want to break in, you make deals with the devil. It's uber competitive. You got millions of people who want into this shit. So you end up, making little deals with the devil where you'll take a job that should pay you guild minimum $100,000. You do it for 10 grand or whatever, So we're definitely taking advantage of, but we've been pretty good about not being that taken advantage of. Like we went to the guild and actually got that producer threatened to be blacklisted with the WGA and shit unless he paid up not only some money that he owed us, but then for all those extra drafts that he should have been paying for, et cetera. So shout out to the Writers Guild for having the backs of writers who aren't even members yet, which we weren't at the time. But I mean, it's all about leverage to me. Hollywood is all about leverage, and when you start out, you have none. So the only leverage you ever have is to write something great or create something great, and then you give yourself leverage, which is something we try to do with this as well. We're like, can we? I mean, Sydney might speak to this differently because he represents clients and everything, but I see, and we were talking about this with Nate the other day. From my vantage, a lot of times in Hollywood, what they like to do is tap proven commodities. The Diablo Cody, who's this hot blogger, or this playwright, or whatever, But all the hordes of screenwriters who are banging on the gates to get into Hollywood, they're not as interested in. You got to really write some crazy script or make something, or nowadays find an audience on YouTube, or go out and do an audio play or a podcast, and you blow that up, and then you come into Hollywood with at least a little leverage. If you're just off the street and you got query letters and shit, unless your script is fire, and even then it's only usually going to be an sample to get a gig writing a assignment of some intellectual property that they own, or maybe staffed on a TV show or something. But I don't know, man, it's tough. But I don't feel like we ever got truly shafted. Like we were willing to make those deals with the devil. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you feel like you could write a worse character than Cactus Jack now? As a challenge?
But now you got me interested. I'll be thinking about
it. Make a Cactus Jack prequel with his dad.
Here's the thing about Jack. He fucks with Chris Sandberg. But you could argue he kind of deserved that. He played with matches and got burned. I'm going to make him my little project. There's a scene in the movie where Jack's like, I'm your little project? Fuck you. You're my little project now, right? So you could say he kind of had it coming a little bit. He didn't reach out to Jack as a human being. Very early in the movie, Jack says, what do you think you're going to do? Make your little documentary exploiting me? It's kind of what he's doing. Now, he'll stay in the car like, what is hate? What is all that? But you could tell he's not really approaching this philosophically. You know what I mean? So you could argue he kind of deserves some of that. But other than that, while Jack said a bunch of awful, awful shit and he has awful ideas, I wouldn't say he's as bad as someone who harms children. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people in real life who are way fucking worse than Jack. So yeah, I guess I could easily write a character worse than Jack. I mean, that's the thing. Jack seems like the worst guy ever, but again, a lot of it's bad programming that he's expressing. And Chris and I talk all the time about this. This is the foundation for not only how to write most characters, but how to understand the behavior of the people in your lives. That Noah Baumbach Greenberg axiom: hurt people hurt people. You know what I mean? Every white supremacist, hate monger, anything, they're all miserable motherfuckers. These people aren't happy. I posted a video earlier about this guy who ended up getting his Nazi tattoos covered and all this because this black parole officer, this lady, went to his apartment one day as his parole officer and told him, you need to take that Nazi shit down and put smiley faces up. So every day when you wake up, the first thing you see is smiley faces, and you just surround yourself with positivity. And eventually that helped him claw out of that hole and that abyss that he was in. But it is interesting because there's this whole movement out there of punch Nazis, fuck these people, they're irredeemable. And I don't believe that. That's why for this event we had, we wanted people to give money to Parents for Peace because it's an organization that recognizes the humanity even in a Cactus Jack, that this is still a person who could be redeemable, that was an innocent child one day, but got broken and hurt and filled with fucking bad ideas. So, I mean, how bad is Jack? He's awful, but to me, he's a lost soul. He's broken. He was a kid who, you know what I mean? I'm not giving him a free pass at all, and I don't give anyone a free pass for that kind of behavior. It's like society can't tolerate it, but at the same time, you got to recognize the humanity and even the worst people, you know.
Mm-hmm. So we never really saw Jack do anything. Do you think he would have actually physically gone through with his threats and all of his vulgar hate? Do you think he would have hurt other people, or do you think he would have kind of wimped out?
I personally think he would have just stayed down there and wimped out. I think he was a coward.
I feel like Jack at baddest, I guess, at most badass, is nothing more than a spider. The only reason that he did any damage to Chris Sandberg was because he came down into his web. Jack is terrified of the outside world, and he would not have gone outside to hurt anybody. He comes home, and if he had to go to a convenience store, I'm sure before the 6 months of him just being in the basement all the time started, when he had to go to a gas station or a store, he cowered if a black person looked at him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'd come home and talk about how they weren't human and he was superior. He's just nothing but cowardice.
Yeah,
I feel like he was probably on the same path as Dad was.
Yeah.
That there's that room where he says, "This is the room where my dad blew his fucking brains out," and then when they run around the stairs and he's chasing Sandberg after he kills his mom and Sandberg runs and flees and shit and the camera falls, you hear him say, "Don't go in there." Like, that's the room his dad killed himself in. Like, we don't go in that room, but eventually that becomes the torture room. The room, the game show, the torture, the waterboard, that's all in the room that his dad killed himself in. So all that misery is inflicted in this room that he connotates with misery, you know? And I could see him very easily with all those guns around and just the way his mom talked to him, like in that screed she does. She fucking goes ham on him, you know? So you kind of see what drove him to this place. I could very easily see him maybe killing her, some murder-suicide shit. But, yeah, I could see him hurt himself probably before some others, maybe.
I think the only thing that gave him courage, actually, to kill her that day is the fact that Chris was there. Because he endured years, decades of being
he can't look like a punk
that.
taking this from her in front of his dog.
Someone else.
That was definitely in play. It's crucial. So Chris, again, could kind of be blamed, you know what I mean, for that
exploit. It's his fault.
Right.
Jack's the victim.
I mean, he is.
But you know, that's actually, somebody asked a question earlier about sort of trauma for Gull's character, for Jack, and I, you know, we talk about this, but he is a victim of child trauma. You know, this is a damaged person, and it's sort of like, imagine being Trump's kids. I imagine they're all sociopaths. Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you see it when, like, Ivanka tweets out some statement, you know, these are patriots, in the middle of people trying to, you know, freaking storm the Capitol. And it's like, really? Are they patriots?
Right. Well, look at Trump, though. Yeah. I assign the same humanity to him. Yeah, Trump is his father dealt with his fucking dad, you know?
Allegedly his father was a monster, you know? But I mean, the difference between somebody who's a complete sociopath and all of the rest of us, we all have our own trauma that we have to deal with, is that normal people, whatever normal is, we seek out help, right? Therapy, you find a release, sports, hobbies, whatever. You filmmaking, you find something to be able to channel that trauma and deal with it, understand it, you know? And in the case of someone like Jack, he was not able to process it. He
should have played more bass and
you know, well, he has to separate himself from his mother, right? His family. He's in the basement. So he's literally inside the trauma. He's not escaping from it. He literally is living it 24/7. You know.
And his mom, who's a monster. What the fuck were her parents like? I'm saying it all runs downhill.
Yeah.
Like, sure. Trickle down economics is a fallacy, but trickle down trauma is real as shit, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder, and actually kind of scared of how many people are actually like that out there, like Cactus Jack, that, you know, are kind of meek and small in public, but down when they're alone, they're just filled with so much hate and rage.
Yeah, it's a barking dog versus a biting dog.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Well, people have said to us, are you worried about those people that might just, no, I'm worried for them. You know what I mean? I'm worried for their mental health, that there's these people out there who might watch this movie and identify with Jack. That makes me sad more than anything. I'm not scared for my own well-being or some shit that I might get canceled or whatever, or that they might do something horrific in the name of the character we crafted. I wish we could. I mean, that's partly what we wanted to do with the movie, is sell the notion, and we didn't want to hammer it home too much that he was abused, it was trauma. So there's only 2 scenes in there that really speak to it, one for each of the parents in their own way. But I mean, that's it, man. If we could do one thing to help reality and help solve all of our societal ills, it would be treat kids better and make less psychopaths by not breaking these people when they're 4 years old.
Yeah, for sure. Mike asks if the scene with the rings was the closest we get to see to Jack's humanity.
I think so. Yeah. His whole the way he carries himself, the tone of his voice, all of it is just, that's him. That's Ronald. And it's just the smallest piece of it. Like, he forgets for a few minutes.
He's a kid. He's talking about his dad.
Yeah.
He's kind of a kid again.
And the mom story.
That was a question from Mike Morin, our friend who has done some killer art for Cactus Jack a couple times, and is amazingly talented. So everybody should go check out Mike Morin.
Yeah, both of us, Cactus Jack Film on Twitter, and what are you, Nathan Graham Davis or NGD Rights or something on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Those accounts both share Mike Morin's art, and it is fucking dank. It's amazing to have this dude just like, I was up late, couldn't sleep, I fucking made this poster.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some of the art that you guys have posted, and that's really good stuff. All right, well,
any shout outs? I want to do a shout out to our Mexican team. Yes. I call this the Mexican co-production.
Three amigos.
Freddie Noriega, our editor. He's a beast like no other. The guy is just a machine and made for this type of filmmaking, and we're blessed to have him on the show. And he introduced us to our composer and our post sound, Antonio and Diego. So a big imprint on the movie was Freddie's creative talents and also his relationships in bringing some wonderful, talented filmmakers to work with us. So we're very fortunate, and thank you to those guys. Viva Mexico!
Yeah, I already spoke to Diego, what he did rescuing the sound, but Antonio and that score just brought the movie to life in this whole new way. I mean, I remember showing our parents like some rough cuts that had no score or anything yet, and people who don't make films, they don't see what it could be. They just see clay or whatever. Like, I remember watching their faces, they were watching, they're just like, what are you fucking doing with your life? This is so dumb and pointless. But I'm like, just wait when it has the right music and all that. And man, these guys brought it home.
Yeah, they did an amazing job.
All right, anybody else got any shout outs?
Well, I'll do one to Michael Gall, because Michael Gall
for sure
took insane chances for any performer and put himself literally on the ledge and then threw himself over, and there was no way to come back. So
thank you.
Balls to the wall. I have nothing but the utmost admiration for his talent, and he's fearless. It's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So what do you guys have next, Chris and Jason?
Sleep.
Yes.
You're doing a rom-com. You're gonna do a musical, right?
We're actually seriously considering a rom-com.
Dude, you know us. I mean, we got a database with about 150 fucking ideas, and if I say so myself, each of them is pretty good in their own way. So I don't know. That's the thing is you kind of wait and just. I know a lot of people, creatives, they just want to be creating all the time, but these things are commitments. If you're going to write a screenplay or a novel or anything, these are commitments, like Sydney said, of your time and everything. So I'm about picking the right one at this point. I'm not trying to commit to the wrong story and spend months telling it and realize it didn't turn me on, So we're waiting for the characters to raise their hands, essentially. And whatever character makes the most clamor will get brought to life.
Yeah, for sure. Nate, did you want to plug your YouTube channel?
Sure. You can head on over to Nathan Graham Davis is the channel. But I've been doing a series for the last 4 or 5 months called re-entry, as I've been trying to break back in as a screenwriter after being out of the game for several years. And I've been writing a script very transparently and publicly on that channel and interviewing writers along the way, amazing writers. A couple weeks ago, Jay and Chris were on. Yeah, check it out if that's something that sounds interesting to you.
It's good, man. It's an amazing resource, actually. If you're trying to break into screenwriting or just learn about the craft, the guys he's having on, the women he's having on are amazing. I'm talking pro, like the showrunner of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, shit like that, like legit. So,
wow.
Just
one last shout out, since we're doing them, is to the Twisted Dreams crew. Chris, Tom, and everyone that works for you. Thank you for hosting us and doing our virtual world premiere. It's a special time. This is the Thornton's first movie. I couldn't be happier for them, and you guys supporting local talent means a lot. And thank you. We owe you one.
Yeah, absolutely. It was my pleasure. Our pleasure.
Thanks for believing in the movie, even though you didn't see a cut till like 3 days before it should air. You're probably like, what are we getting ourselves into? But I knew you were all in for years. You've been saying, let us help. So appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And
shout out all the Indiegogo supporters way early on as well who made a difference. I'll shout out my dad, Paul Graham Davis, who jumped in as well with that stuff. So thank you very much. We got a couple
guys who came to the end to help with post funds too. Julio Gagne. Shout out to everyone who shot us hot take videos. If you notice in the movie, there's
amazing too.
Yeah, with this hot taker section where it's like all the reaction videos on YouTube. One thing we thought would be cool and fun is anyone who watches this movie, tweet or Instagram at us, Cactus Jack Film, your own hot take reaction to the movie. That could be fun and cool. So shout out to all them. And like I said, we've got a couple producers who still didn't want their real names on here because they got some interests that might be threatened if the cancel harpies came for them, et cetera. But so there's been a lot of people though, man. Our families for sure, et cetera. I feel like we're like fucking Oscar speech or something at this point.
Yeah, that's okay.
But, you don't have to prep. Come on. We know it's going to be best picture.
What kind of award show could Gall be up for? What is it, Indie Spirit Awards or what the fuck?
Definitely Spirit Awards, sure.
Spirit Awards, love. Keep an eye on Michael Gall. I know it's January. It's like in fighting. You can't Max Holloway fight of the year in January. We don't know. We'll see. But this fucker should be in the running at the end of the year for some kind of indie acting awards.
Hopefully not like the Ku Klux Klan.
No. Is that the note we're ending on? God damn you.
I don't know if they have a film award. Gull, I know you've got a whole bunch of projects coming up. What are you working on now?
I have there's a film, you mentioned it earlier, called Blood of Bad Men, that from Ross Bigley, that is coming out, I want to say spring, maybe early summer. I also intend to do a lot of, I want to try, now that things are slowly opening up a little bit more, I want to get back into stand-up this year. So hopefully I can book some dates for that. And I'm actively looking for more roles. Got a couple of web series ideas that another actor and I are kicking around. So hopefully something like that will be taking shape as well.
Very cool. Awesome. Sydney, did you have anything you wanted to plug?
Well, my film Last Full Measures on Hulu.
Yeah, Last Full Measures, amazing.
If you have Hulu, check it out. Inspirational, very different than Cactus Jack. You'll cry for a different reason.
Yeah,
it made me cry.
Yeah, I cried too, man. William Hurt, goddamn.
Yeah, pararescueman who saves like 30 guys during Vietnam, and he's killed. And the film's about the men he helped save, who formed a relationship with his father, and it was his only child. And they rushed to get him, try to get him the Medal of Honor upgraded because he got the Air Force Cross at the time before the father dies. And it's a true story. And I don't want to give it away, but it's a happy ending.
Ed Harris, Sam Jackson, William Hurt, like legends. Amazing. Peter Fonda's last role.
Yeah, we were very lucky to have Peter Fonda in the film. And it was his last movie.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I saw it myself.
Hard Out Podcast.
Hard Out Podcast. Yep.
Yeah, me and Chris.
All right, well, guys, thanks so much for doing this. Best of luck with Cactus Jack. It's an amazing film. Look in the comments. There's a link to buy the film, buy or rent the film. Please do it. It's an amazing film, and let them know what you think. Go on their Twitter, go on their Facebook, and give them a shout out. Let them know what you think.
Send some hot takes.
Send some hot takes. You might make it into a DVD extra. Who knows?
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody.